All right, now we're recording. Okay, we gotta make sure we record this. Because last time I didn't record it and I had to redo the whole thing myself. So let's go back to the share video. Don't worry, Canoe, I'm getting better at it. I know you're like, come on, man, get it together. I got it.
I've said nothing.
I know. Okay. Okay. So here's our last one, and it's a more visual one than any. Pay attention closely. There's 15 questions on this one, and there is no questions at the end of each piece. So you just gotta pay attention and know the answers. Not so bad. It's actually not a bad one to go through. So drug abuse, zero tolerance, and as I said to the guys already on here, this is what they teach at POLA. This one. So it's our policy that they teach at POLA on drug abuse and zero tolerance. Okay, so here we go. So introduction. The objectives of the Sea Cadet program are to introduce you to naval life. I think you guys know that. To develop in them a sense of pride, patriotism, courage, and self-reliance, and to maintain an environment free of drugs and gangs. If you ever saw our definition, that is what it is. It actually says those words: maintain a drug-free environment, or environment free of drugs and gangs. Drug and alcohol abuse is a severe detriment to the U.S. Navy combat readiness in terms of performance, reliability, judgment, and lost time. The U.S. Navy and the U.S. NSCC policies with regard to drug abuse are zero tolerance. I'm going to try to tell you what test questions are. Both, there's two questions on that one right there. U.S. Navy and NSCC. I think you guys will get that right. Class objectives. Explain the NSCC policy on drug abuse and prevention. Explain the U.S. Navy's policy on drug abuse and prevention. Explain the U.S. NSCC policy on alcohol and tobacco use, which we haven't covered tobacco use yet, right? Identify different types of drugs and understand their uses and hazards, and understand the hazards of tobacco and alcohol use. So, importance: drug and alcohol abuse and tobacco use are not healthy. That's kind of duh. You should know that. Abusing alcohol is certainly not going to be good for your health, and tobacco, we all know what that does to your lungs and cancer and so on and so forth. It's destructive to the NSCC and Navy efforts to instill pride, promote professionalism, enhance personal excellence. It creates hardships on family, friends, shipmates. Definitely. Incompatible with the NSCC and military discipline standards. So tobacco use is incompatible. Doesn't mean it's not allowed in the Navy. It isn't allowed in the cadets, for cadets at all. But we'll get into that later. But the Navy, they'll allow it, but it's not compatible with the mission. They don't like it. As a matter of fact, on my ship, my CO banned it. We couldn't smoke on the ship. You couldn't chew tobacco. You couldn't do anything. Now, that's not Navy policy, but he is the CO. He ran that ship, and he made those decisions on his discretion. So even though it may not be policy, we had to follow what he wanted, as long as it wasn't detrimental to the command. And stopping tobacco is not detrimental to the command. To be honest with you, I saw a first-class petty officer who was in charge of the OS division, or the I guess you guys don't know what OS is, maybe, but it would be the the combat readiness mission team. He was in charge of that, and he was demoted, restricted to the ship, lost. He went to an E5, lost his pay status for 45 days, and he was confined to the ship simply because he was chewing tobacco once. Ruined his career. Like the CO, and I think that was a bad call on the CO's part, because it isn't really a Navy policy, but it was his. And this guy who had served like 18 years in the service now, his career was pretty much shot because of that, because he chewed tobacco once on the ship. So, did I even go over that last slide? Let's see. Okay, so there you go. The NSCC's policy is zero tolerance, right? Now, drug abuse, zero tolerance. All right. Any NSC personnel found to be in possession or under the influence of drug will be processed for immediate dismissal from the program. Personnel may be subject to criminal proceedings depending on the situation, or if illegal drugs are involved. Zero tolerance means dismissal. It will occur on the first offense. You've heard that already with the Navy policy. So same thing, I told you we followed pretty much the same policy. Department of the Navy, zero tolerance. There you go. Any sailor guilty of a single incident of drug abuse will be processed for separation and unlikely further discipline as well. What kind of further discipline? Well, you've heard them yesterday, but it's true that you could go to jail. You'll definitely get a criminal record, most likely if obviously you get arrested. Captain's mats, reduction in rate, fines, restriction, humiliation, and discharged under other than honorable conditions. There is a question on that, so you can look at what disciplines you'll get after or if you are guilty of a single incident. So there's obvious ones right there. So if you see humiliation, it's one of them. So I just wanted you to take a quick look at that and make sure you understood that one. All right, moving on. Navy drug testing. The Navy tests for drugs primarily through urinalysis. We covered this, I believe, yesterday as well. Commands must test 10 to 40% of their personnel on a monthly basis. All service members will be tested at least once a year. That is a test question, by the way, and up to 5 times at random intervals. So they can test you up to 5 times. Can they test you more? I don't recall any rule saying they could, but I'm going to go, if you're taking this quiz, go off of our slideshow, which says they can test you up to 5 times, right? Positive samples are tested 3 times for accuracy and must be positive all 3 times in order to result in a positive report. I do know that, and I have seen this, and this isn't part of the test, but when someone does pop and it comes back and you're guilty, they can do a blood test or check your hair. There's all kinds of things that they would carry on with if there's any kind of way that you're trying to, say it wasn't you. They can, because I think you guys probably know this. It's in your hair, it's in your blood. It doesn't leave for quite a while. So they'll find a way to figure out if they need to, but more than likely they won't even go that far. When it gets back from a urinalysis, it's pretty much a done deal. Facts about drug use. This is also a test question, so just know that. U.S. contains 6% or roughly 6% of the world population, and they use 80% of the world's drug supply. So that's a huge part. 80% of the drugs are used in the U.S. We spend over $175 billion a year on the war on drugs. 1.5 million emergency room visits each year because of drug use. Half of all federal prisoners are in there because of drug use or drug-related offenses. Violent juvenile crime, most due to drugs, rose 118% in the last decade. So there are more than 2 million new users of marijuana since January. This is kind of dated then, that particular one, but I would say that's very accurate to what's going on now. I believe it's probably gone down a little bit, but now that they made it more wide, I don't know, because I see a lot of people that have never touched it before, more than I've seen in the past. But it's also more available, so I don't know if they're telling me the truth or not. So with all these stores and they're making it legal in places like that, but as far as we're concerned, we don't touch it. It doesn't come near us. It's illegal. Even if it's legal in this state, it's still federally not legal. So, and we fall under Sea Cadets, because we're federally funded by the Navy and the Navy League, and the Pentagon gives us a portion of funding. So that's where our dollars come from in a lot of cases. So we follow federal law, and not to mention that it's you're too young for any of that type of stuff anyway, and you shouldn't touch it ever. It's not going to help you in your career at all, so stay away from that stuff. So the effects of drug use on your health. Hey, Canoe, you want to read some of those? So you don't hear my voice all the time. Go ahead and read off what are the effects of drug use on your health. And by the way, there is a
question on this, sir. Okay.
It'd be easy to tell. I think I made if you want to know, I think I made the one. It's like pick 3, and I made one of them pretty clear. It's not that one. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, sir. Effects of drug use on health: heart failure, rapid heart rate, coma, respiratory failure, nausea, seizures, depression, disorientation, paranoia, memory impairment, impotence. I don't know that one.
That one you don't have to say, right?
Blurred vision and psychosis.
Very good. The one on there that you didn't say properly is probably one you never want to worry about. All right, we won't get into what that is if you don't know. So you know when you got wrong or you couldn't say right, Kel? Okay, moving on. Types of drugs. What's that? Types of drugs: marijuana inhalants, heroin, ecstasy, cocaine, crack, LSD, GHB, methamphetamines, PCB, and club drugs. And they're going to go through each one of those. There's marijuana. How is it used? Well, it's smoked, right? Harmful effects. And you can see that increases your heart rate, anxiety, and panic attacks. 3 to 5 times as much carbon monoxide as cigarettes. So obviously it's not healthy for you. You're sucking in that stuff. Loss of memory, attention span, and capacity to learn. You guys are in high school, at least most of you are. I'm positive you've seen some, I guess the term that what we used to use is potheads. Have you seen people like this in your school? Anybody?
Yes, sir.
You know, if you've seen them, you can obviously, they look distorted, like they don't know what's going on half the time. Their bloodshot eyes are like, just not right. Am I wrong? You see sense. In other words, they look like an idiot. You know, they're kind of dumb. It seems like that, right? So that's where that's what you get from marijuana, especially. And I can tell you, I had a friend that was one of these guys, and he was burnt out by the time he was 25. He don't even know where he is anymore, and that's from a lot of marijuana use. It's highly addictive and significantly impairs your judgment. Not good. Everybody says this one's harmless. It is not harmless. It can turn you into a blithering idiot like that guy I know. So inhalants. Menon, you want to read this one?
Yes, sir. Inhalants, how is it used? Sniffing or snorting. The harmful effects are slow body functions, hearing loss, liver and kidney damage, blood oxygen depletion, and limb spasms. And inhalants abuse can result in death from the very first use.
And that's something people don't get, because if they inhale too much of that, it actually kills your brain, cuts off the oxygen to your brain, and you're dead. So that has happened in the past. People go in there and do something, inhale something as silly as like whiteout. You know what whiteout is? You don't want to touch and smell it. Stuff's toxic. Not supposed to be inhaled. It's not gonna go good for you. So stay away from that type of stuff. Heroin. Giutino, you want to read heroin?
A or M, sir?
M, please.
How it's used: injected, smoked, or snorted. Harmful effects: collapsed veins, liver disease, pulmonary disease, HIV, AIDS, hepatitis
Right.
from needle sharing, depression, highly addictive, top-ranking drug among drug-related deaths.
Exactly. This one has killed more. This one kills a lot of people. People they abuse this one. They do it wrong. They overuse. It's this is the one where they burn it on the spoon. If you've seen that, and inject it, a lot of times you'll have a lot of people highly addicted to this one. I've witnessed some of these guys in my career. I've seen them in foreign countries and here in the U.S. and it's not a pretty picture. They are an absolute mess, and they can't. It's very, very hard to get off of this one when they're addicted to it. they're addicted to it. It's terrible. It's hard to get off. So obviously I know you guys will never touch this, and if anyone ever offers you this type of stuff, you just need to get away from these crazy people. Don't go near it. Ecstasy. A. Gitino A. What about this one?
Ecstasy, how it's used, taken as a pill, harmful effects, increased heart rate and blood pressure, confusion and depression, severe anxiety and paranoia, blurred vision, lack of coordination, tremors, and paralysis.
I don't see one thing on there that's good. Those all are terrible. This is one of those ones that what is that rave club? The raves, they use this a lot in raves and stuff. I know of a few folks that were in the Navy that went to these kind of raves, took this stuff, and they got kicked out of the Navy. So they use it for more than what it says there. I won't get into those details, but it's not a nice thing, and it leads to criminal acts. Generally, when you're on ecstasy, you're probably going to do some things that are not very nice to the opposite sex, and a lot of bad things can happen. A lot of bad things. Stay away from. You should stay away from all of these, but this one in particular, people think it's pretty harmless. It's not. It's not harmless at all. Cocaine, crack. Mr. Reeling, I see you're here. Want to go with that one?
Sure, sir. Cocaine crack, how it is used, snorted, injected, smoked, harmful effects, paranoia and aggression, damage or collapse of nasal septum, cardiac arrest and seizures, HIV and AIDS and hepatitis from needle sharing, chemical reaction with alcohol.
That one I didn't really know it had an reaction with alcohol. And I'll never know because I don't touch that stuff. So another terrible drug, another really terrible one. Probably the most common in I don't know. This is one of the more common ones you see with people after marijuana. They go to the cocaine, and the crack is sort of like, let's be honest, it's like poor man's cocaine. They make it a different way, and it's easier to do and probably much more potent than cocaine. In the 80s time frame, cocaine was what well, I won't say they all did, but that was like the Wall Street drug. All the bankers and all those type of hip kind of guys were all using that, and crack is taken over for that. And terrible drug. What was the stuff? That was methamphetamines from Breaking Bad, right? Okay, that one's going to be coming up. Oh, LSD. How it is used: ingested as a liquid, often as paper. Harmful effects are hallucinations, severe mood swings, terrifying thoughts of fear during acid trip, flashbacks to bad trips, and long-lasting psychosis. I had a friend when I was a teenager that was really into this drug. He followed the Grateful Dead, and that's probably all I need to say on that. But he did follow them. He made his own acid. I don't know how he did it. I don't care how he did it, but it was pretty potent stuff. I never touched it, but I saw him. He had no idea where he was at the time. And more than once, I saw him screaming running down the road because he thought bad people were after him. I don't know what the heck was going on, but that was his trip. He would have what they call a bad trip, and he would flip out and just run for his life half the time. And that could happen years after they took it. It comes back. That's what they call flashbacks. It comes back at you. And if you've ever taken this one, you never really lose it. It could affect you sometime later in life, anytime. So this is a big no-no. And it could be on like the simplest little tiny piece of paper, and you wouldn't know it. So stay away from anybody. I shouldn't say stay away from the people that follow the dead, but probably a good idea. But anyway, moving on. Yeah, they're probably very old. Yeah. GHB, how it is used. It's ingested as a liquid or a pill. Harmful effects: nausea, vomiting, seizures, and coma, respiratory problems, liver failure, severely impaired judgment. Has been used in date rape cases. So just know that I do have a test question on this one as well. And why they use it in that is because this affects someone so bad that they're basically pass out, or are not in reality with what they're thinking. And that's when this is one that they can put in your drink, things like that. You'll hear stuff like that happen in clubs. That's why if someone offers you a drink that you don't know and you didn't see them pour it, it probably is not a good idea to take it in a club. None of you have to worry about that because hopefully you're not going to clubs. But, you know, sometime in your life that could happen. A lot of guys buy ladies drinks. Totally get that. That happens in a club. But if I were a female, I would not drink it. If I was a male, I wouldn't drink it either unless I saw it being poured by the bartender. I do not want to take a drink from someone that I don't know because I don't know what they put in it. So just be careful with that one. Methamphetamines. This is your Breaking Bad drug. Everybody knows. Anybody seen that show? If you did, that's terrible for you. I mean, it's not, but it's not for the young folk, I don't think. But that they glorify this one in that somewhat, but obviously it is not something to be glorified. It's caused the downfall of so many people in this country. Methamphetamines is a terrible one that's raging across a lot of the poorer districts and things like that now. So harmful effects is nausea, vomiting, seizure, coma, Parkinson's disease, like symptoms, extreme, is that anorexia? So you don't eat at all? Anxiety, paranoia, and aggressiveness, irreversible damage to brain resulting in strokes. This is quickly addictive, leading to a larger, more frequent doses. And it's so easy for them to overdose with this one. That's where most of the deaths come from anyway, overdosing on methamphetamines. Steroids, how is it used? It's injected. We went over steroids yesterday. You can see it causes liver and heart problems, sterility and hair loss. It means you ain't gonna, if you don't know, it means you're not gonna have babies, and you'll lose your hair. The next one, obviously it speaks for itself. Depression and aggressive behavior, bone loss, and stunted growth. Approximately 2% of teenagers will use steroids before high school graduation. Not a huge number, but 2% when you're talking, I don't know, 20 million. That's what? How many is that? 20,000? 20,000, right? So that's quite a bit. That's quite a bit. Is it 20 or 200,000? Somebody smarter than me out there, I'm sure can get it. I think it's 20,000. 20,000. Am I right, guys? Is it 20,000 out of 20 million? There's some geniuses on here. They should know it like right off the bat. They're probably trying to figure it out now. Okay. Club drugs, how it is used: smoked, ingested, injected, or taken as a pill. GHB is one of them, as you can see. Harmful effects: impaired judgment, reduced inhibitions, date rate common, impaired memory, long-term brain damage, and will cause death when used with alcohol and other drugs. So those are Rufinol, which is roofies, ketamine, ecstasy, GHB, and there's more. They keep making more of these all the time. So get to our policies. The NSCC policy is zero tolerance for alcohol by any cadet. Test question. All cadets are under age 21, therefore prohibited by law to purchase or consume alcohol. This is important for you to know for instructors. Sea Cadet officers and instructors who can legally drink may not do so in proximity of cadets. If you see an instructor drinking a beer, that's a violation. Can't do it. Cannot do it. If they're like your father and you're at home, that's different. But you know what I mean. If you're in drilling status, you can't do this around any cadets. You also may not do so within 8 hours of interaction with cadets. So if someone drank the night before and we were drilling early in the morning, they can't come to drill unless 8 hours has passed since they had their last drink. So we have a zero tolerance policy for the cadets, and the officers have to keep it completely away from cadets in every aspect. We did one time have an officer that was drinking at a picnic, let's say, not our picnic. It was his own ship's picnic. but he did do that, and I had cadets around, and he didn't get in trouble so much, but he's no longer in the program. Let's just say that. And that's how serious that I will take that. I will not and cannot tolerate any officer from any group that's affiliated with cadets drinking around cadets. So the Navy policy on alcohol use is responsible use. Underage drinkers violate the law, will be prosecuted accordingly. Punishment is based on misconduct, not on the alcohol problem. So what did you do? What kind of trouble did you get in? That's going to be your punishment. Severe alcohol-related misconduct may result in administrative separation. And as I told you before, I've seen that. I've seen people get dismissed for severe alcohol problems. All right. So consequences of drinking and driving. Navy consequences. Restriction, confinement, loss of pay, reduction in rate. You'll hear that a lot. Every time you get in trouble, loss of pay, reduction in rate. Just about all the time. Loss of promotion recommendation. If you're someone in the service, this hurts you big time. You do all you can to get where you get, and they take it away from you, and it's so hard to get back. You feel like you're starting all over again, so it's just terrible. Loss of base driving privileges. I've already told you what happens there. Separation and discharge. Civilian consequences. You're going to go to get fines, court costs, higher insurance rates, which nobody wants. Loss of insurance, revoked, suspended, or restricted driver's license, and jail time. All bad things. Consequences of drinking and driving. So you can see this drunk driver and 2 others were killed. So you go out drinking and driving, this is definitely what can happen. You're impaired. You're not able to control or handle what you think you. I've seen lots of people that are just totally drunk and think they're normal. They're not normal. They can't even go straight at all. They concentrate so much on the road that they're all veering off and not even realizing they're doing it. So you see any person you know that's drinking, don't let them drive. Don't let it happen, because all you need is something like this to happen, and it throws your life into a turmoil. So, and I would even say that if you go out to dinner with people and they have 2 or 3 or 4 drinks at that dinner, I would say you probably don't want to drive right away. At least let them hang around and try to get some of that out of their system. You probably wait an hour or 2 before you go anywhere, because I know that you can have a drink or 2 as long as it doesn't put you over that level. And usually over a span of an hour or 2, each drink you have, an hour kind of decreases one of the drinks, if you know what I mean. So the longer you wait, the less alcohol you're going to have in your bloodstream. So I know, like, a parent goes out and has a couple glasses of wine. I'm not saying that they can't drive. I'm just saying hang out a little while, let it detox out of you, and then go. And that's usually what you do at dinner anyways, usually a couple hours. So NSCC tobacco policy. All NSCC cadets, regardless of age, are prohibited from using tobacco products while at NSCC functions. So our policy is you can't use it, period. Doesn't matter how old you are, you can't use it. NSCC, no, we can't control what you're doing at home now, but you certainly can't use it in any of our functions. NSCC officers, midshipmen, and instructors who are legal age may only use tobacco products in designated area. I believe I put this as a test question as well. So if you're of age and you're an officer, a midshipman, or instructor, you may use it, but it has to be in a designated area and it has to be free from cadets. All NSCC personnel are discouraged from using tobacco products anytime and anywhere in their lives. So we ask you not to do it, but I can't tell an adult that's a smoker they can't have a cigarette. They can, as long as it's away from you and you have no interaction with cadet. All right. So the U.S. Navy tobacco policy: reduce tobacco use and protect personnel from involuntary exposure to secondhand smoke to the greatest extent possible. As I told you, my CO banned it, so that's a pretty great extent. Prohibit smoking in all spaces except designated smoking areas. Encourages members to quit smoking through use of formal programs in counseling, medical assistance, and learning how to deal with causes of smoking. So they'll do all they can to get you off of it. So facts about tobacco use: more than 400,000 deaths annually. Remember that? That's a test question. So there's more than 400,000 deaths annually from tobacco use. 3,000 children start smoking every day, 1,000 of whom will eventually die from smoking. That's 1 in 3. That's pretty bad. Cigarettes cost their users $60 billion annually in healthcare and insurance. Nearly all first use of tobacco occurs before high school graduation. Chewing tobacco is not a safe alternative. It contains nicotine and a number of known cancer-causing agents, more addictive. And I have also seen the cancer that they get is here in your face, and you end up losing your jaw, losing your tongue, things like that. When they really abuse chewing tobacco, it could just rip you apart. So consequences of tobacco use: yellow teeth, bad breath, cancer, emphysema, bad one, heart attack, stroke, asthma, heart disease, birth defects in women who smoke while pregnant. And right there I put a picture of a human lung after years of tobacco use. It's pretty gross. You ever seen a healthy lung? It's red and looks good, looks pretty what you'd see on any medical show. That looks like a stalactite. It looks some kind of alien from a movie, but that is actually a lung after years of smoking. Disgusting. So summary: we can explain the NSCC policy on drugs abuse and prevention. Explain the U.S. Navy policy. So before I go on, what is the policy on drug abuse and prevention for the NSCC, Menon? What is it? Got it.
That there's zero tolerance. Sir.
Yep, absolutely right. I knew you'd say that. How about you, Riley? What about the Navy's policy? What is that?
Zero tolerance.
Very good. Very good. See, pretty easy. Explain the NSC's policy on alcohol and tobacco use. So the NSC's policy on alcohol and tobacco use. What Canoe, can you tell me what that is?
Zero tolerance.
Secret policy on alcohol and tobacco use.
Zero tolerance, sir.
Okay, look above you. Drug abuse is 0, right? So
yes,
the NSC policy on alcohol and tobacco use, it's 0 tolerance for cadets. You're absolutely right. 0 tolerance.
Yes. And then for officers, it's not permitted if you've drinking within 8 hours, or if you
or within cadets. Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly right. So yeah, you're at a cadet function. You can't. Tobacco use is the same. You can't be anywhere near a cadet. So you're right. It is 0 tolerance for cadets, but the officers can. Alcohol, no way. Can't even see it. If you see an officer with alcohol, that is a violation. Okay. Tobacco, however, as long as they're not near you and they're in some designated area and it doesn't affect you. So yeah, you're right.
So also the thing that you asked earlier, 400 or 20 million.
Yeah.
2% of that is 400,000.
Oh, that's right. It's double. I was thinking 10. I was doing 10%. Okay. 20 million, 20% is 400,000.
2%. Only 2%.
I'm sorry, 2%.
Is 400,000 people.
That is a lot. That is a lot. Well, I was right about it was either 20 or 40 or 200, but I forgot to double the number. Okay, thank you for getting that out there and making sure we got it on recording so we all look pretty smart here. Identify different types of drugs and understand their uses and hazards. I think we can do most of that. Understand the hazard of tobacco and alcohol use. So, any questions about any of that? Anything?
Yes, sir.
I told you this one wasn't going to be too long. So, I mean, we still ran about 30-something minutes here, close to 40 minutes, but this is the last part. Just so you know, Canoe's on here and anybody else that's on here, you guys have to have one more meeting amongst yourselves, and it needs to be about 2 hours. And my recommendation is that you do each class separately, what you learned from each class. You can take the questions, you can do however you want to do it, and go over it. Just make sure that the layman, if no one heard any of this stuff before, would they understand the policy after they listen to what you have to say? you're basically going to have to be the teachers. If you can do that, that's the last thing we got. I'm planning to schedule that for next Saturday. Are you guys able to do something like that on a Saturday, roughly the same time?
Yes, sir.
Does anybody have an issue with that here at least? No? Okay. So we'll do that. We'll schedule the round table meeting next Saturday. You guys have your discussions. An officer will be sitting in on it, but we probably won't interrupt very much because it's supposed to be you guys. Once that's done, again, if you get close to 2 hours, I'm good with that. So as long as you can get, you know, a good chunk of change this time done, we'll be okay. We want to do a Navy 2 hours. So, you know, I'm perfectly fine, but I'm sure with my blabbering, I'm sure you guys could blabber on for quite a while as well. So won't be too hard. Especially we get to hear some of your stories. If you have stories, it'd be great to hear them too. With that said, go ahead and take the Kahoot exam. I'd like to hear from you if it was easy or difficult, because I know this one doesn't have the questions listed. So you let me know how hard you really think that was, okay? With that said, I'm going to end the meeting, and thank you guys for attending, and we'll see Canoe. I'll see you tomorrow night. All right, and the rest of you will see him on Monday. All right, thanks. Have a good night. Have a good day, guys. Bye.
Bye, sir.
Thank you, sir. Have a good day.
You too, sir.
You're welcome. Canoe. Oh, Canoe's gone. All right.